Welcome to the Ronan Bell Show. This conversation is going to kick off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Professor Travis, what is going on today?
Ronan, thanks for having me, man. How are you?
I'm good, working on the project for, your class, being a good student as always.
Good. That's good. That's good. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good that you throw that in. I don't consider you a suck up at all for
that. Yeah, but so Professor Travis, before we get into anything else, could you just explain like how you got into this whole entrepreneurship thing?
Well, for me, it's kind of ingrained in my DNA. On my father's side of the family, my father is the third generation of the oldest retail business in my hometown, St. Mary's, Pennsylvania. It was started by my great grandfather, Leonard Lesser. It's a jewelry store, but with a focus on watch and clock sales and repair. My great grandfather had the very important job of setting the watches of the train conductors. When the train would pull into town, the conductor would grab the watches from all the engineers and the conductors and run down to my dad's store and have them all make sure they were set on time. Before he got into that line of work, he was actually a snake oil salesman, riding around from town to town, step right up, folks, type of thing. So I see that part of me. In some ways, it manifests itself in some ways. I'm like, oh boy, yeah, that's definitely there. But so he started this business, seeing a need. He was working in this old blacksmith shop. The blacksmith was ready to retire and had the building, and so my grandfather got it from him and started a watch and clock business with selling jewelry at the same time. And like I say, a very important job to make sure that the trains are running on time. St. Mary's was a very, very big railroad town, with its tannery, and at the time, tannery and lumber were the big industries, and coal were the big industries up there back in the early part of the 20th century, late part of the 19th century. And then that developed into carbon and powder metal in that town, but still there was a need for jewelry and watches and clocks. So yeah, and obviously that business is not going to continue. It was started in 1904, and my father's gonna, when he's done, that business is over, which is a shame, but it's just not for me. And there's not a single member of my family that thinks I should be doing that either, which is great. Nobody ever tried to push me into it. In fact, my dad was quite the opposite. He was just saying, no, I'm not wishing this on you. I'm not wishing this on you. But he established a really great business, and the reason why that business lasted so long is because not only did it have the product, but it had that service aspect too. And you look at any business that really makes it, I find you look at any business, they have that service component where they service the products they sell. Even if they don't sell them, they'll service them. They make house calls still. They still, for grandfather clocks, obviously it's hard to throw a grandfather clock in the backseat of your Prius and bring it over. So that's he'll make that house call to come pick up the inner workings of the clock and bring back to the shop with him, which he's the only game in the region. I don't even know if anybody around here really does it. So I mean, he services people from State College too sometimes. So it's kind of crazy that this, the way that industry is now, and it really can modernize. Everybody's got a clock on their phone now. People just wear a watch for fashion purposes. Nobody really, clocks aren't really a thing in houses as much anymore. So it's a dying industry. And unfortunately, I mean, I still wear a watch, and I have a couple, of course. But and I plan to have clocks in my house as well. Whenever I do buy a house. So that's my dad's side of the family. And then on my mother's side of the family, another very, very important job still today is my great grandfather on that side of the family started Straw Brewery in St. Mary. So he was a beer brewer and made beer and German lager, American lager, German style beers, and because it's a very German Catholic town. That's what was founded by German immigrants from Baltimore. And So they brewed beer. They brewed beer for the town, and I mean there were multiple breweries, just like any town, in that stage of our country. There were multiple breweries in all these towns. But then with Prohibition, they kind of started going away. Straw Brewery is the smallest brewery in America to survive Prohibition. So that was started in 1872. So really, there's no getting away from it for me.
Yeah.
It's super ingrained in my DNA. Like I don't know any other way. And when I started out working in the golf industry, and working as a golf pro, and then went on to tournament administration and a rules official. And I really liked it, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I realized a big part of that was the days I had to go to the office, that 9 to 5, and sitting in the cubicle in front of my computer screen and answering phones, and I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I wasn't liking it. And what appeared to be a very bad thing, in that the golf industry was not very good. We had the mortgage crisis and the subprime mortgage crisis in 2008. Couple that with the face of golf getting in a very, very high profile scandal. Didn't do anybody any good, didn't do the game any good, and do the industry any good. So the industry took some lumps, and there really weren't a lot of positions for advancement for me at that point. I earned myself a very specialized set of skills. I was very qualified for a handful of jobs, but those jobs weren't becoming available anytime soon. So it was either take a step back or switch industries. And I had no idea what else I wanted to do, because I was so convinced that golf, for so long, that I wanted to work in golf. So I ended up back here. I ended up here in State College, and enrolled in business, got accepted to Smeal Business School, and got my MBA, and graduated in 2014. That's where that was the big inflection point for me, and that's kind of how it got me on the track to where I am now.
Well, it's really interesting to me because being an entrepreneur is kind of like, it's pop culture nowadays, right? Because everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, and Gary Vaynerchuk as this guy, like, get in your face mentality and like go do something, which I love. But what's interesting to me is that you started it even before it was a big thing. Like 2014 is kind of that middle ground where it wasn't as big yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think and it's not just Gary V. I think you've heard me talk about my feelings toward him, so we won't go in on that. But I think he offers value, and a lot of people love him, and he does help people. He does help people, and that's important. He helps people with this kind of mindset get their mind right, so to speak. But the shows like Silicon Valley got that helped that too. The tech boom in the early part, late 90s and early 2000s, and then the bubble bursting. But that really opened everybody's eyes to entrepreneurship. And then the gig economy came along, and the gig economy made people realize that I can still make money. I don't have to have a regular job. I can still make money in other ways. I don't know that I would advise somebody to make their, if somebody came to me and said, I'm going to be an Uber driver, and that's going to be my career. I don't know that I would say, like, okay, cool. Like, good. Yeah. That's a good life choice, Ronan. I don't know that I would say that. It's a good side gig. It's a good side hustle. But I think that there are more, there's safer, more secure ways to get your nut. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, it's very interesting. Especially, I like how you bring up like Uber driving, DoorDash, because first of all, it's a great job for kids between the age. I think you have to be 18 to start. 18, like a college kid, you get money every Monday. It's not taxed until you actually have to pay your taxes, which is interesting. But what I like about it is it's a way of income that works around your schedule, and that's something that's very big for students nowadays, especially with everything going on right now with COVID and everything, and everyone's schedules like in 15 different places at the same time. It's hard to figure out what to do. But what I think is interesting about, like you were saying, like it's a good side hustle. I think more people are realizing that this thing called the internet is just so amazing, how you can literally make
website and make millions of dollars. Like it sounds like, and but in the foundation of it, that's how simple it is. Like not that simple, but yeah.
And I think you raise a great point there, Ronan. I think that I know that we don't even know, we haven't even utilized the internet to its full potential, right?
Oh,
like
100%.
we don't even know what this thing is capable of really yet, and especially as I'm getting, this will get us off track probably, but I'm starting to read more about non-fungible tokens, and
amazing, right?
I'm like, okay, I understand it, but holy crap, like what was the one I just saw? It was like some absurd amount of money for, I can't remember what it was now. So I can't recall as it'll come to me, but it was some absurd amount of money for this non-fungible token. And for me, I'm old. I'm getting old. I'm 42. I'm not old yet, but I'm getting old. And it's getting harder for me to, I'm seeing it, like, how when you get older, it gets harder for you to wrap your mind around new technology. And with blockchain and, Bitcoin and non-fungible tokens, I'm having trouble. So I get it. I think I get it. The part of it I get is the fact that it exists verifies its existence. Right. So that's the part of it I get.
Yeah.
And so that's and I think that's all you need to understand.
That's dead on what it is, pretty much.
Right. So that's all you need to understand. But the app, we don't even know what the applications in this are. I have a feeling it's not going to be currency. I really have a feeling it's not going to be currency. I think we're still going to have cold hard cash for a very, very long time.
Well, it's interesting that you raised that point, because I think that though we're still going to have like cold hard cash, I think that like cryptocurrency, not so much NFTs, that's kind of a different subject, but cryptocurrencies in general, they're going to be like, it's going to be a way to, if I want to go to Canada and I don't feel like getting Canadian dollars, I can pay with Bitcoin, though it might be taxed more. That's the big thing with it right now is like the United States tax is like 30% if you want to pay with Bitcoin, which I like, that's ridiculous.
It's absurd, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, like they're not going to know how to regulate it because, the argument is that it regulates itself, right? So how are you going to regulate something that regulates itself? I don't know. I'm glad I'm not trying to solve that problem, but that's going to be, and we don't know what this is all going to be. I might not see it in my lifetime. You might not see it in your lifetime. It might be, your kids that finally realize the true power of the internet, that realize the true power of blockchain and what it's capable of and what it can be used for. And hopefully it's used for something good before somebody bad discovers how to do something bad with it. that's the other thing, right? That's the other thing we got to look at.
Well, that is a big problem with, I know it happened with Bitcoin Gold, and that was like a huge, like someone hacked it and it literally went from pennies on a dollar to 350, like in a span of a second. And it's like, how does that even happen?
And how does it get hacked? It's not supposed to get hacked, right?
Exactly. Right. People are smart. People are way smart, and people know how to use the computer way better than we know how to. And that's what's crazy about that.
And I think a lot of that has to, like I was on computers from a very young age. I've had computers my entire life, but my father, no. Even my uncles and the people just a little bit older than me, no, not at all. But from like my generation down to your, we've all had computers our entire lives. Now you've had smartphones your entire life that I didn't have, and that opens up a completely different ability to do things. So now this is so ingrained in you and your generation, this kind of technology, that you're able to do things that I can't even think of, even though I've been using computers my whole life. And then just think of the next, just a few years older than me that didn't have computers their whole life, that, only got it when they were, 10 or 11, somewhere in there. And so it's really mind boggling to think what could become of these things and what could become of our society because of it. And what is the next big business idea that goes with it?
Yeah, and that's the thing, especially with business ideas nowadays, that like I feel the good old saying is like, there's got to be a time where we run out of ideas, right? Like, and I don't think
look at the movie industry. They've been out of ideas for years.
Oh yeah, and they do the same thing over and over again.
Exactly. I'm still waiting for that remake of Goonies. I can't believe they haven't done it yet.
Oh my God. But like that's what I think's interesting about like the business world and how technology is going to continuously like get better. Am I or are you going to be the person to figure that out? Absolutely not. I just talked to a guy, his name was Sherrod, who's a research assistant at Penn State, and he's come up with AI technology to predict when an HVAC system is going to like have a malfunction and predict it before it happens. And I'm sitting there like, how do you even start with that? Like, what do you even go into? Like, that's so many high frequencies. And that's amazing, though, to me.
I'm getting continually amazed every day. I'm amazed every day by something, which is good, which is a good thing. It's a good thing. But yeah, we don't know what's ahead of us. And that can be scary or that can be promising, depending on what happens, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, that is really
what
true.
your outlook on life is.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, like, as an entrepreneur now, how are you managing class at Penn State with the business that you're currently working on? It's rough.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Ronan, and you know, you may be able to tell this. Just, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's been periods this semester where you've heard the way I talk about things, and you know, I fell behind a couple times in grading, and you know, everybody seems to understand, and that's great. That's great that, you know, people are in the right class to understand that what I'm going through. It's hard, but you know, at the same time, Ronan, it's like I wouldn't trade what I'm doing. You know, I've got a great gig here at Penn State, you know, teaching young people like you who, you know, it's an elective, but it's an elective that people want to be in. You know, it's not like it's a gen ed where they have to be
Yeah.
there. So that makes it a lot easier to show up. I am very excited at the prospect of teaching in person again. You know, the class yesterday was the second section. There was, you know, 9 or 10 people there. That's the most people I've been in front of, and you know, since last September. So that was great. And it felt like I was teaching in a classroom environment again, which it was. It's you know, so that aspect of it is great, because the whole learning to teach online has been hard, and it feels like I'm talking to my computer, and it's not what I want to do. I don't want to teach online. I want to teach in person. So that's added to that. So, you know, I mean, you throw teaching 2 classes, starting a virtual repository for SMEAL graduate students, and being the kind of manager of that project, and then starting a internship program where we subsidize corporate innovation and entrepreneurship majors at SMEAL, and being kind of the point person on that. So that's my duties with Penn State, which is, you know, quite a bit of time. And then on top of that, I have my garden bed startup, which, you know, we're kind of sitting in a state of limbo right now, trying to figure out how we're moving next with Cityscape Farm Supply. And you know, we want to see it succeed, but you know, both my business partner for that, who you met with class with Woody Wilson, you know, we both have our own things, and we're both really passionate about building our own things, and he enjoys spending time with. And he's 3 small children, and you know, God bless him, man. Like you got it. He wants to be a good dad, and he's a great dad.
Yeah.
And I want him to be a good dad, for Christ's sake. So, you know, we're both kind of doing our thing, but still kind of paying attention. So that makes it difficult. And then, you know, what I'm working on mainly when I'm not doing class, is a nonprofit organization called Appalachian Food Works, and it's a food hub, which food hub is the joke around the industry is that if you've seen one food hub, you've seen one food hub, because their business models vary across need and across region and all that. But basically what we're doing is we're helping to increase access to food grown and raised in central Pennsylvania. So we're trying to really support the small and mid-sized farmers that are located around State College and you know, throughout all of central Pennsylvania, you know, latching on to the local food movement that's been going on before COVID, but really when COVID hit, that it really ramped up, and everybody across the board in this industry just saw huge gains from it. And, had we been a little bit more further along, we could have taken advantage of it, but we were operating on a very small space and we didn't have our own vehicle at the time. When COVID started, I had my own, we're just driving my Jeep Compass around to do deliveries, which isn't ideal. But, it's now we have our own truck and we're moving forward with that. But it's become, we're focused on selling wholesale to restaurants and institutions and getting product out to them and really supporting the farmers that are around us. And that's something that for me, I got involved with that by a little bit by chance. But when I moved down here to State College, I realized that to get a steak from that beef farm I pass every day. Why is it so hard for me to do that? Why it shouldn't be? It's right there. I should just right. Store. Why isn't that being served at the restaurant I like to go to? So that was that big disconnect. And then very serendipitously, I had this opportunity presented to me and I had the time. I actually talked to Woody, my business partner, Cityscape, and said, hey, I don't think I can pass this opportunity up. And he looked at me and said, you absolutely cannot pass this opportunity up. This sounds awesome. And so here I've been working on it now for 3 years. About 3 years, and we're still pushing forward. No signs of stopping anytime soon, which is good and great. And I'm loving it. But again, it's a lot of work. It's I've got a lot of things, and I need to get product populated onto it. And I'm looking at the clock right now, and I'm probably gonna be sitting here at my computer till 7 or 8 o'clock tonight, getting product populated. Not something you want to be doing on a Wednesday night after dinner, but I would, again, rather be doing this than go sit in a cubicle from 9 to 5 every day.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It gets like, I think being busy is just is qualitative. Other people see what you're doing and they don't understand what it is. Then people consider you busy. But at the end of the day, I have a job. I'm doing a couple things for some other different people and do a podcast. I do school, but I don't feel like I'm busy. If I wasn't doing any of the things that I'm doing, I just would be bored. I would have too much time on my hands. I'm sure you know how you feel.
Yeah. And screw that. I don't ever want to be bored. Before I came to business school, that's a great point. Before I came to business school, I had about 15 months in St. Mary's and living in my dad's apartment. My apartment my dad owns, and I actually grew up in. I lived in until I was 5 or 6, and I just remember days of just me pacing around the apartment in the winter because I couldn't go play golf. All my friends were working. My family was working. It was it was winter. It was snowing or whatever. It was cold. I didn't have anything to do. I was just pacing around, and it was terrible. And when I started business school, I got, obviously that's a lot of work, especially the first year. And I was so busy, but I was kind of okay with it because, I was at the business building by 7:30 in the morning, 7:45 in the morning for 8 o'clock classes. And I was there until after dinner, usually most nights. Some nights I would go home and eat dinner and then come back. Not that that's the place I want to be all the time, but you kind of grow accustomed to that. And then you decide, I just don't ever want to be bored ever again in my life. I honestly, I can't tell you what it's like to be bored anymore, which is awesome. I really don't know what it's like to be bored anymore.
That's a good thing. I don't think people understand. I get it. I'm a college kid and I'm supposed to be a college kid, right? I get the mentality. I understand, putting myself in some other kid's shoes. I understand why you're doing what you're doing. You're having a good time, you're going to frats and you're partying with your friends. But to me, like you were saying earlier, stuff like that didn't fulfill me, just working, in a cubicle that, partying and stuff doesn't fulfill my needs. And people look at me like I'm crazy. And that's the thing. And I'm sure people will say the same thing about you, but they call a lot of successful people crazy, right? So that's at the end of the day, what I kind of think of when people make that assumption that you're just considered crazy because of societal standards.
Well, I mean, you have to be a little crazy to want to do this, right? because the conversation I had, I remember having a couple years ago. I bumped into a classmate of mine from business school at a tailgate, and so we were talking, catching up a little bit, and he was actually working here for Company State College for a little bit right after graduation for like a year or two, and then he got a job down by Philly where he's from, and so he moved down there, and pretty good job working for I can't remember, financial consulting firm or something like that. And so we're talking, and I'm like, so how's it going? How you like the job? And he's like, well, I'm getting paid $125,000 a year. I got a sweet apartment. I got more money than I know what to do with. I can't spend any of it because I don't have time. I'm working 70, 80 hours a week. I'm stretched so thin, I don't have any time, but I got all this money. And then he asked me, how you doing? I'm like, well, I'm broke as a joke. But I'm doing what I want to do. And he goes, you know what? It's that balance between security and freedom. And that's the decision you have to make. Most sane people would take security. Most people would say, you're going to give me $125,000 a year to do this job. They're not going to care what the load is. They're just going to go, okay, because it's that security, right? Meanwhile, and then you're saying, well, yeah, sure, you can make your own schedule and everything, but you're making $35,000 a year, whatever I was making at that time, probably not even that much. And, which for an MBA, you should not be making 35, you should be making a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't care because, the security thing was something that was never there for me to begin with. It was always, like I said, it's been ingrained in me that, you're an entrepreneur, whether you like it or not. It's in your DNA. So you might as well embrace it and not try to fight it and be miserable and bored in your life.
Well,
exactly. Nothing's fulfilling you.
Exactly. Well, I think there's like a difference between and I understand, like, some people just aren't determined, and that's like, at the end of the day, it's what it comes down to. Like, if you do not, anyone can empower you to do something, but it's up to that person to actually execute what you're going into.
That's a great point, Ronan. I'll take it a step further. Not only they're not my opinion, my thought is, and you're saying that, are they not determined because they don't have determination? I don't think so. I think they're not determined because they haven't found that purpose. They haven't found that driving force to make them determined. And that's why a lot of people get bored, because they don't take the time to push themselves out of their comfort zone. They don't take the time to make themselves feel uncomfortable, and they don't understand they don't really get a life purpose out of what they're doing. They don't feel fulfilled like I was before. And they never get there. Then they never feel that, they never get there. And maybe they're happy doing that. Maybe they are fulfilled that way. But I think you hit the nail on the head. If they don't have that determination and they get bored with what they're doing, it's because they haven't found their purpose and haven't fulfilled that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. And what I think is interesting that you were saying earlier is that, like, you obviously work for Penn State, but you also do your actual business on the side. And that's what's really cool about what you do. Because I kind of feel like the same way. Like, I hope I graduate college and I can get like a nice, good job and like do what I want to do in order to, make an income, like to be able to support people, like support like my wife if I have one, kids, wherever it may be. But also, like, I like podcasting. Like, this is what I have a passion for. I like talking to people, whether it be over a phone on customer service or whether it be like doing an interview like this. And that's where I think that people misunderstand. Just because you go and do this job doesn't mean that you can't fulfill one of your other passions as well. It's just up to them at the end of the day to say, hey, I'm not going to watch Netflix or House of Cards tonight, and I'll actually do what I want to do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I found my life was so much more, I felt more fulfilled that I especially in the winter, I don't allow myself to turn on the TV until after 8 o'clock. Yeah. Even if I'm done, if I feel like I'm done working for the day, at 6 or 5 or 4 or whatever, at least during the week, during the school, don't turn the TV on until 8 o'clock at night. I try to do something else, whether it's read a book, whether it's play my guitar for a little bit, whether it's, work on a project I've been trying to work on, around the house, whether it's cleaning up something, whether it's, looking at, researching something, where it's calling my mom, stuff like that, that is a lot better than just, because so many people, and I got into this habit too, you get home from work, you turn on the TV, you make dinner, you eat dinner, you sit down in front of the TV, and you don't move until 10:30 at night. You get up, you stand up, you go to bed.
Yeah.
And you wake up the next morning and you do that exact same thing over again. It's no wonder why you do. That's how you get into a rut. And it's no wonder why you don't feel any purpose or any you're not determined to do anything, because you've drug yourself down into this rut, this bad habit. And not to say we all need outlets. We all need to sit down and watch Netflix once in a while. Like, I'm not saying that. I love it too, but I really believe that it's so easy to do that, and you have to be disciplined. You have to train yourself to push yourself away from these habits and do stuff that will maybe make you feel uncomfortable a little bit, but will at least help you grow and help you determine what that purpose is in your life.
Well, exactly. It's being uncomfortable. And like the first thing I've ever done that was uncomfortable, like especially in high school, was like after basketball practice, taking an ice bath. And I was like, people would hate it. And I'm like, why? Like, this is something, like, it's only 10 minutes. Like, it's not that bad. And you're making your body get uncomfortable. And that's what people don't like. They don't want to try something new. And I don't know if it's the fear, because like, I can't think for someone else. I just think it's that fear of not knowing what it's going to lead to. Like, I'm sure when you started your company, like, you think that, oh, this won't be like that bad. Like, I'll still be able to sit on the couch on a Tuesday night and, eat some Cheetos or whatever it may be, and have time, do this, that, and this, or whatever it may be.
Right.
But I think people do have an inclination or a thought right away when, like, they have an idea or something. They go, well, how is this going to affect everything else? Rather than, how can I take what I already do, apply this in, and still make myself have a decent structure in my daily routine or week or whatever it may be?
Right. Yeah. I like that. And I think, like, I think that's well said. I like that. Yeah. It's hard for people to see outside of their routines, and we all have routines, and we need routines. It's healthy, but you don't want to get obviously too ingrained in your routine, because then you end up in this rut. You end up just going through life, just going through the motions, because you have this routine. I actually, one thing that I did during the early parts of COVID was I really concentrated on getting myself out of some of my bad habits. Like, I changed the way I had things placed around the house. I rearranged my living room. I changed my shower routine. I changed how I arrange certain things. I just did all these little incremental things. And I'm like, I came away from it, like, I just made my day probably about 20 minutes more efficient by all these little steps I took. I made my life more efficient. And I didn't even realize that wasn't the end goal, but just that focus, like, okay, that constant check-in of, okay, how can I improve? And I'm like, whoa, I just made my life more efficient. But when you're locked into your routine, you don't see that, and you just keep beating your head against the wall, trying to accomplish what? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're hammering a nail that's already in the wall, and you have to be able to make that change. And that, like, change word is scary to some people, but change is also really good. And it's really good because if we were in 1970 and someone told you about doing a FaceTime call or something like that, you'd be like, oh, you're nuts. Like, you're kidding.
Right.
I don't want that. But now, like, if we didn't have FaceTime, how much more harder COVID, like, this time period that we're going to be in now would have been. It would have been a whole different world.
If this happened 20 years ago, there's no way we'd be in such a bad economic place. We'd be, we're not in a great economic place, but I believe we're going to have a swift recovery here. But we'd be in a real big mess right now if we didn't have this technology capabilities. Absolutely.
Oh, exactly. No, I think it's so crazy how much, like, the world has changed in that. But Professor Travis, before we get into the last question, everyone's favorite question, I have a little segment I like to call top three. What are your top three favorite entrepreneurs right now at this very date?
Top three favorite entrepreneurs at this very date. Wow. Well, let me think here. I think I'm inspired by what a gentleman here in town by the name of Hunter Swisher is doing. The way he's able to build his company, Foss Solutions. And he just got $10 million in Series A funding. So, that's obviously very admirable. But someone in my position, that's, could really use $10 million. I got several things earmarked that I could do with $10 million. I think it's hard for me. It's hard for me to have admiration for people I don't know. I feel this is the way, it's the same way I feel about statues. I don't think you should erect statues of real people, because every human being is inherently flawed. And, we're seeing it, in the last year or so, the way statues are getting torn down across the South. Should they have been put up anyway? I don't know. I don't know. Probably not. But, I don't think any statue should be put up about a real person, because, again, people are flawed. The Joe Paterno statue here in town, or was in town, wherever that is now, in the basement of Beaver Stadium, apparently. But people got really mad when they took that statue down. And Joe Paterno didn't even like the statue. Why are you getting so mad at it? He didn't like it. And, my opinion on statues is we shouldn't be erecting statues of real people. And that's why I'm having a hard time with your question, because I look at anybody that's doing this, anybody that's starting their own thing, that has started their own thing, that has built their own thing from the ground up. I have a tremendous amount of admiration for.
I love that answer. I love that answer. No, that's really interesting, because you're the first person that did that. And especially with this question, because I like how you said anyone that's doing this, you got the balls or whatever it may be to go and do it. Like that's amazing, first off. And that's what I really liked about your answer, because you're like, I have respect for anyone else who does it. And I'm also that, like, I don't really look up to anyone in terms of that. I just think they're, it's another human being at the end of the day. Like he's just, might have a little bit more money, or, cool tattoos or whatever it may be.
Right.
Like,
because I could sit here and I could also sit here and rattle off generic answers like, oh, Jack Ma and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Yeah. But I think like the people that I genuinely look up to are like world leaders or civic leaders, people like Nelson Mandela, who got thrown on a prison island for years because he was standing up for what he felt was right. And then he gets pulled back into society and becomes president of South Africa. Like that's somebody that I go, yeah, that's the way to be there. I'm all for capitalism, as you've probably seen, Ronan, but I'm not one that says, we need to be concentrating on shareholder revenue, which is why I can't look at a Jeff Bezos or a Steve. I admire Steve Jobs for what he did, but I can't say like, oh, Steve Jobs or oh, Bill Gates. I think like, we talk about Avant Chenard in class a lot, and he's someone that I do look up. I like what he's about, but do I admire him? I don't know if I admire him. I dig what he does. I love his products. I love his mindset. I like what he does, and he's someone I could hitch my horse to or hitch my wagon to. I could get behind what he's doing. Absolutely. But do I idolize him? No, I don't want to idolize him. I would rather look at people, like I say, like Nelson Mandela, that is just exceptional, and someone that I can, I could never obviously be Nelson Mandela, but I look at someone like that and what they went through and the determination that they had, and that's someone I can say, okay, like that's pretty awesome. Like, how can I be more like that, rather than saying I want to be like Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. So Professor Travis, before we go on with the rest of our night, question I asked all my guests. What would be one piece of wisdom that you want to pass on to the listeners out there?
So you're gonna get a preview of this because I usually lay this one on you on the last day of class. It's usually one of the last things I say. So I'll give you a little preview of it, but don't blow up my spot in class in a couple of weeks. Okay.
This will come out after and it'll be cool.
Cool. All right, good. You know, we were just talking about change. And so that's something that I'm really big on. You know, I like to say I'm nothing if I'm not adaptable. And so the last piece of advice I lay on you in this class is that change is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, as we've seen, you know, and I mean, we all got a really big lesson in change in the last year, right? Those that don't learn to adapt to that change are going to get consumed by it. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's going to happen. So, you know, I think that that's something that I like to give you guys, the students in the class, as a parting words, is just, you know, nothing is inevitable. You've got to learn to roll with it and push. That's why it's important to keep pushing yourself, because you need to learn to adapt and roll with the punches and figure out how you can survive. Because, you know, otherwise, you're not going to survive.
Change is inevitable. You gotta get ready to adapt. Get ready to pivot for whatever life's going to throw with you. Guys, that's it for another episode of the Ronan Bell Show. Professor Travis, thank you so much for coming on today. Is there anything that you want to plug before we go on?
You know, Appalachian Food Works is a central Pennsylvania's food hub. And if you want some fresh local food and you're in the central Pennsylvania area, please by all means check us out, appfoodworks.org. We're also on Instagram @appfoodworks.
I love it. Professor Travis, again, thank you for coming on the show today. Guys, that's it for another episode. I don't like doing the follow button, like whatever, subscribe. I'm not about that. But guys, have a good rest of your day. Hope you're getting through whatever you're getting through. And as always, y'all just keep on keeping on.